So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dustin Miller. I'm an associate director here in Career Services. I serve the School of Engineering and Applied Science students. That's the team I'm on. And I'm lucky to be joined today by my colleague, John Niles, as well as one of our peer career advisors, Olivia Zhang. So I want to thank them both for being able to be here with us today as well. So as I mentioned, my name is Dustin Miller, and John and Olivia, if you want to introduce yourself as well.
Sure. My name's John Niles. I work with Dustin on the School of Engineering and Applied Sciences team as an associate director. Thanks for having us. Thanks for attending this session. Olivia?
Hi, I'm Olivia. I'm a junior now at Wharton studying finance and decision processes. And I've been with the career services team for about a year now. And definitely feel free to reach out to the peer career advisors when you want your resume or cover letter reviewed or just general career help. We're always here to talk. Yep.
Thank you so much to you both. So what are we going to cover today? So really the overarching goal of this session is to help you feel as prepared as possible as you can going into career fair season, which we'll go over some specific dates from our office as well. But for today, we're going to talk a little bit about virtual and in-person fairs and kind of how they compare to one another. What are their similarities? What are their differences? We'll talk about some of those action items. What can you do to prepare to be in the best shape, best form for yourself as you head into this season, especially maybe if you've never been to a career fair before. I think this presentation is really helpful for that and just kind of debunking any questions or myths. Speaking of questions, if you do have questions throughout the presentation, please feel free to put them in the chat. Olivia is going to be monitoring that and answering them as they come up. And then, of course, also, if there are other questions, we could save them for the end too. Totally up to you all. So please use the questions. We're going to also talk about employer research tips and best practices, some day of tips and tricks, how to maximize the experience. And then again, like I said, any questions that you all might have too. So a couple of the upcoming fairs. So this might be a good time if you need to, this is on our website as well, the Career Services website. So please feel free to check in on that too. But if you need to go and get a reminder, if you want to take a quick picture of this screen, anything like that, I'll leave it up here for a second. Just want to point out some of our upcoming fairs here. This is just September. So on our website, we will have career fairs that go a little bit later into the semester as well. And then a similar workshop will be done in the spring, where we have February as kind of that main month for the career fair season. But again, some fairs that follow that as well. So just want to highlight that September 6th is going to be that first fair. So plenty of time. You still get ready, get a resume ready, and hopefully a lot of the tips and tricks you can use today to implement into the career fairs in the upcoming month. So again, I'll give you just another couple of seconds here, especially those of us who are just joining. Welcome. Thank you for spending some of your afternoon with us. And I wanted to get everyone a chance here if they need to take a picture of the dates that are coming up for the career fair. So I'll give it another second here and then we'll get going. All right.
So there's two types of career fairs that you have the opportunity to attend this fall. We'll be hosting in-person career fairs, the more traditional type of career fair where you'll see employers housed in their different booths that you can wait in a line, the queue, and go up and talk to a specific recruiter or representative from that organization. Virtual career fairs work similarly, but in the virtual space. Within the Handshake career management platform, you can sign up for individual one-on-one sessions, which are 10-minute sessions with a representative from an organization, or you can attend 30-minute group sessions that are more informational based on what the employer has to offer.
And then speaking of kind of like that in-person fair, just navigating them in Handshake. So here's an example from the website. This is the career link, career fairs that I have screenshotted here. That's kind of talking about, you might want to prepare and think about what employers are going to be at the fair. Is there anybody that I want to talk to in particular? We'll get into some day of tips and tricks a little bit later too, but just to kind of show you the way you want to navigate to the fair and then click under employers, and then it's going to alphabetize them for you to go through and see. So if you're looking for somebody in particular, you can do an employer search there on the left. Also, you'll see the filters on the left-hand side there. So if you're looking for full-time, if you're looking for an internship for part-time, These are things that are really helpful that you can use to kind of narrow in your search. I definitely recommend kind of coming into the career fair with a plan if you are specifically going to find specific employers that you want to talk to. If you've never been to one before and you really just kind of to test the water and see what it's all about, you don't necessarily have to map out who you want to speak to. Sometimes it's all about just seeing what the environment is like so you can prepare for the next one as well. So this is what that kind of looks like. You can favorite a fair. If you happen to already be following employers on Handshake, you might be able to tab on over to that as well. And then from there, that's when you're going to be able to see if there's anyone you're following employer-wise that's going to be at this fair. So again, it's just a screenshot from September 6th coming up here, kind of how to navigate to that in Handshake. Definitely recommend. Handshake's the key to our office. So make sure for any new students who might just be joining us for the first time, I know obviously it sounds like you have your Handshake account set up because you were able to find this event to register. So welcome, and please continue to utilize Handshake in that way.
So with the virtual fair that will be happening on September 12th, the page looks very similar. You can read about employers, learn about employers, but we want to direct you to the test Handshake button on the virtual platform. I think it's really important that you make sure your video camera and your audio are coming through so you don't waste a minute when you have that 10-minute in-person one-on-one session in our virtual fair. Anything to add, Dustin, about the virtual fairs platform?
No, I think that's great. And we're going to get into a little bit later in the virtual fair about signing up for like a couple of there's different types of sessions, whether that be a one-on-one session or a group session. Those are kind of the two ones you'll be on the lookout for. But as John said, just really wanted to point out testing that Handshake video. It's a little bit different than Zoom or Teams, or if you're using any other type of platform or software. But again, very similar structure as far as the filtration systems, employers that are coming. This is how it's going to look for all the fairs throughout September. So there's also just some blogs in general that you might want to look at like Handshake has actually come up with these of how to get the most out of your virtual career fair. You can also tag virtual career fairs as well. There's kind of, like what not to do, what you can do. Here's, and there was a previous article talking about like virtual recruiting and what that looks like. All these things are still applicable here today. But we're going to now just kind of transition from the informational part to maybe some of the perks that the career fairs are using as well.
Right. I mean, I think virtual career fairs do a really great job of meeting you where you are because you can access them at home. Many of the same constraints and recommendations apply as an in-person fair, but some of the perks, there's no lines or major time constraints. You can schedule in advance so you know who you're going to talk to when you don't have to wait in line. And that kind of gives you time to adequately prepare and research the employers that you'll be seeing. And like I mentioned prior, the virtual fairs have two options for visiting with employers: one-on-one discussions that are 10 minutes, one-on-one. These are limited capacity. So you'll want to log in on the sign up. I believe it's September 4th at 10 a.m. when you can go online and you can book your one-on-one sessions. There's also group sessions that you can attend, and these are 30 minutes with unlimited capacity. So you have no managing of your belongings. You don't have to find a place to put your backpack. There's definite perks to the virtual fair, but we encourage you to attend both.
And here are just some kind of a quick checklist of some things that you can do in advance. I get that question a lot from students. Oh, Dustin, what do I need to do for the fair? So here's are just some basic things. You want to make sure that the registration open dates and mark them on your calendar. So again, visiting the website to read a little bit more about that and Handshake itself. Make sure that profile is up to date. Employers are in Handshake too, so they are able to see your Handshake profiles, and a lot of the booths and tables that you'll go up to at the fair will also have QR codes where you can check in. And again, they're going to be able to identify maybe who checked in at their booth with the scanning in of the Handshake. So make sure that profile is visible to employers. That's highlighted because that's really important. Even if you've scanned in, if your settings aren't turned on the right way, they won't be able to actually see your profile. So if you want to make it not visible to employers as you kind of continue to build out the profile and finalize it, that's a good idea. But then just don't forget to switch it back so that it's visible. Want to make sure you have an updated resume and you can kind of create a shareable link with people. The resume itself, you want to make sure that is up to date. Anything that you might have done over the summer, sometimes we forget to polish that or touch that up after we've gone through our summer. So we definitely want to make sure that you're doing that. For the virtual fair too, you want to make sure that you have that quiet professional space with strong internet too. And it's in quotes there, obviously, to attend the fair virtually. So if you have, a roommate and you're looking to use the room over a certain period of time, definitely recommend communicating with them and asking if it would be possible to kind of have the space to yourself in that way. Communication is key there, but you don't want to have anything distracting going on. And I think we were actually just talking in some of our PCA training the other day. I believe Olivia had, brought up that with, the technologies to be able to set backgrounds and blur backgrounds, these are all things we should be doing to not have anything distracting going on as you're going through, any conversations, one-on-one sessions or group sessions. Also, even though you're attending the fair virtually, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, but, selecting a professional outfit to wear for the fair, even if that's just, your shirt that's in the shot there. So you want to be conscious about that. And then, of course, as we mentioned earlier, just kind of reviewing and researching the list of registered employers.
And here's a screenshot of the one-on-one registration. So it's a pretty simple tool within the Handshake account. Once you go to the virtual fair on that date, when the registration for your specific employers you want to speak with opens up, I'll put that time in the chat. It's Tuesday, September 3rd at 10 a.m. is when you can actually book your sessions for our September 12th virtual fair. And it looks just like this. So you choose a time slot, pretty seamless and intuitive.
And then after the virtual fair too, so we talk a lot about, the follow-up and that process. So you can easily message to kind of continue the conversation or a thank you to the person that you spoke with. So I get this question a lot as far as like, oh, do career fairs actually work? And yes, they do. But I think that there is an expectation that maybe if you just attend the career fair and then the event ends, that's all you have to do. I think if you want to take it a step further, reaching out to somebody you spoke with, maybe reattaching a digital copy of your resume. I mean, they're going to get a lot of paper copies of resumes. So if you want to take it an extra step, I definitely recommend reaching out, having that contact information, which should be part of your conversation as well. So that way you're able to follow up. But the virtual fair Handshake makes this really easy. Again, they even have some tips here. Not sure what to say. Follow up with something that you loved about it, some enthusiasm for the role. If you have additional questions or maybe things that you wanted to share about yourself too. So these are just a good tip and reminder after the virtual fair.
Right. I think following up is such a critical way to capitalize on your relationships that you're starting to build by attending your career fair. Prior to attending your career fair, you can help in building those relationships that you meet with recruiters and representatives of the company through researching employers ahead of time, trying to push those conversations to a greater depth. How different of a conversation it would be if you go to an employer and you ask, what opportunities do you have? If you can reference a specific opportunity that you know the employer is offering, I think you're immediately going to have a higher depth of conversation, a better opportunity to build a deeper relationship with that recruiter or representative. There's some other ways that you can research employers to help prepare for that conversation. I think there's certain things like the company history, mission, values, or culture. What interests you about that employer? I think the products, have a familiarity with the services that organization offers. What are the locations of the office? Is it international? Is it US only? Is it expanding into new markets? Any recent press about the company? Recent blog articles might be a unique thing to reference that separates you from other candidates that are potential hires for this company. So having good industry knowledge, having good knowledge of the specific employer that you're intending on speaking with can really help broaden the depth of those conversations.
And then here are just some tools for your research as well. So Handshake, the organization websites, LinkedIn, bulk guides, Lippincott Library, Glassdoor. These are just to name a few. And we're actually going to touch on a couple of these throughout the presentation. But all the things that John had just spoke about, maybe the organization website, for example, that's a really great place to try to track down some of those missions, values, company culture, even recent press. Companies love to put that on their own website. So that way, when someone's visiting the website, they can see, I mean, if it's good press, of course, if you're able to kind of highlight and showcase where, you've done your research, about the company. That's really impressive to people. So if there are employers that in particular you want to speak to, I definitely recommend taking the time to do some of this research. And again, this information can be found in many places. We just wanted to list a few here for you.
One of your tools that you have access to, the Handshake Career Management System, allows you to get a head start on that research. From the profiles within the career fair portal to the employers tab within Handshake, you can read about the different employers that you're following, or you can tag different employers to follow. You can discover more employers through the Handshake portal. So Handshake is not just a job board, it has a lot to offer you, especially when it comes to researching employers ahead of time for career fairs.
And then very similarly too, you might want to hear a little bit from maybe somebody who's gone through this process before, especially if you have that one employer in mind. So in this example here, Cornerstone Research, Jacob Ryan, who went through and was able to share with folks what this process actually looked like. And this is kind of some good inside information to have, especially again, if you're targeting that specific employer. This all goes into your preparation, going into the fair, or, oh, I saw that somebody had two rounds of interviews. Could you tell me a little bit about the process? Is it still that way? Is that something that applicants could anticipate? This all goes into your prep, shows them that you're serious about the job, the role, the company, and hopefully you can kind of make a lasting impression on them in that way too. So I definitely recommend being able to look at people who have gone through a similar experience, or at least that can offer some inside info onto how you can best prepare.
Yeah, I think when you start digging into Handshake, you realize it's so much more than just a job board. And it tries to serve a dual purpose of also helping you in the networking process, which we know is so critical to finding that opportunity for next summer or for your future career. So you can connect with peers on Handshake, whether it's looking at a company's page, you may be suggested as to other students like you who've worked at that organization. On the next page, I'll let you talk about this a little bit, Dustin, peer searching through Handshake.
Yeah, absolutely. So one thing that we really just wanted to point out as a continuation of this conversation is that you could filter it by University of Pennsylvania only students. So that obviously might be a little bit more of help to you, or maybe someone from Penn is going to be more willing or likely to get back to you. So we just wanted to point that filter out because it is going to be something that you're going to want to be aware of. Again, if you're trying to be specific in some of your intentional conversations you're having before the fair. So again, and then you'll see here the message button. Handshake makes it really easy to find out. And if people continue to fill out their Handshake profiles, this information is going to come up and be readily available for you to decide who you might want to talk to in that way.
Handshake's not the only place. You also have access to what's called Vault Guides, which are career guides that offer industry insights into what it takes to land your dream job in your chosen profession. So there's a lot of different guides, including primers on industry outlook for various industries, different types of jobs within subsets of the industries. And this is really one of your most useful guides for exploring different types of companies, industries, jobs, and different job prep topics such as interviewing.
And then something else. So if you really want to impress someone and kind of go the extra mile to prepare for that conversation and a one-on-one session, the Lippincott Library has high-level reports and guides and information on employers too. So when you visit the page, simply just navigate over to the business research guides. And then from there, you'll be able to get started. So we have the guides button circled there, and then the business research guides. Again, this can kind of give some just inside info, and really it all goes into that preparation. And I know I've said preparation a lot in regards to the career fair, but that's what a lot of it is going to make you feel the most comfortable when you're there the day of the fair. You kind of have a mapped out plan or an idea about how you want to go about it, and you want to maximize your time, because there are going to be lines of certain employers, so being strategic in that way. So when we talk about preparation a lot, it's because we really have found it that students who do this are the ones that have the most success at the fair overall. And then just a continuation of, again, the Lippincott Library, then you can, from there, you want to go over to the career information after you selected from the previous slide. And then from here, you'll be able to access a ton of different resources, either through like LinkedIn Learning or a workshop, or if you have a certain question, companies and industries, and certain librarians that you have access to as well. Again, to get that industry and company specific information too. So just ask for help. There are plenty of people that are here and trying to assist you in that way. So maximize your resources. That's here in career services, but as we're trying to showcase to you as well, that's also other areas on campus.
A lot of these resources are resources specifically to you, resources that you have access to. And we encourage you to use your resources as a student. You're paying a lot of money to go to the University of Pennsylvania, and you should advocate for yourself by using resources like the Lippincott Library, Vault Guides, Handshake. Now we want to get into some of the day of tips and tricks to maximize your experience for in-person and virtual events. So for starters, for both types of fairs, whether it's in-person or virtual, 3 things employers want to know. How can you contribute to their organization? Why do you want to work for them? And what are you going to be like as a coworker? So some questions that can help guide you in answering these questions are: what in your experience is relevant to this organization? What in your education and academic experience is relevant to this organization? Why are you interested in this industry specifically? Why this organization? What are your goals in your career development? How does it align with the organization you're going to be speaking with? How do you describe yourself? What's your elevator pitch? How would your close friends describe you, or a former or current supervisor or coworker and colleague? How would they describe you? These questions can help guide you as you're figuring out what to talk about when you're talking to employers at the career fair.
Now, some best practices for in-person fairs specifically. So we're going to cover each of these different subtopics here a little bit in particular, but I just want to highlight before I jump into the attire, which is on the next slide, just the 30-second intro thing. It's always like, oh, well, what do employers want to know about me, or what should I be sharing? You really just want to make sure that you've practiced this and talk about, who you are, maybe opportunities that you're seeking, an opportunity to share a little bit about the research you've done about the company or the role, but just be genuinely curious. You don't want to sound overly rehearsed to the point. You want to keep it brief so that your conversation can actually begin, and they can start to ask some questions about you. Hopefully you can then ask some questions about them, but just be prepared to drive the conversation. I think that's really important, but keep the initial intro short, sweet, and to the point, and allow the natural conversation to take place where you're able to kind of follow up after the fact. So I just want to point out that you're going to want to practice that, because if you don't, it's going to be really awkward the first time and they're like, oh, tell me about yourself, or, hi. And it's like, you freeze, right? You're not exactly sure what you're going to say. So definitely recommend practicing. You might have heard it be called an elevator pitch before. Write down some bullet points. What are some key things about yourself that you want to share, in knowing that you will have other opportunities to still expand upon those thoughts and share more about yourself. So kind of hone in on those main key details for sure. Now, the best practices for in-person attire. So we have kind of moved away from, the full suit, the pantsuit. So there's just a couple of examples of things that you can bring. Make sure you consider the weather. It can really, be super warm. You might want to wear like lighter clothing in that case. But dress pants, if you have a shirt, that's great. Some sort of, like a blouse or a cardigan, sweater. If you want to wear a suit, no one's going to like say that you can't, but just don't feel like that you need all those things to come to the fair. And if you're just coming between class too, we understand. And employers understand that as well. They know that you all are really busy. So what's most important is that you can get a chance to be there. But if you want to have just some best practices for in-person attire, these are some things that you definitely want to consider in bringing your best self to the fair. But again, don't let attire be a barrier for you to be able to come to the fair. If it doesn't work with your schedule or just not something that you have, that's totally okay. Still welcome. Please come. We want to see you at the fair. Ultimately, that's the goal.
Yeah, to add to that, I think the goal is to wear something that you feel confident in and feel like represents you well and a good first impression. Some other best practices for in-person: what do you bring to the fair? Well, you'll need your pen card to check in. You'll tap your card and we'll give you a name tag through tapping your card. You'll likely need to have your resumes printed. You know, that means you have to have your resume ready. So check out our resume resources for help with that as well. But bring multiple copies of your resume printed in case there's an opportunity to hand a physical copy to the recruiter. A pen and pencil is a good best practice to bring. You may want to take notes, you know, help remember some of what you talked about with that specific employer. You can take a note afterwards, or if they give you an email to reach out to them if they don't have a business card, you may want to jot that down on a notepad or Padfolio. So it's always good to have something to write on for any quick notes that you need to take on the fly. Some things that you definitely want to avoid bringing: beverages or food. You know, bottled water might be okay, but if you have a full plate lunch while you're trying to talk to a recruiter, it may not be in your best interest to do that. Backpacks. So every year students bring backpacks and they ask if we have a place to put them. We don't. We don't have a location where we can hide your backpacks and you'll be carrying it. So large duffel bags, gym bags, or something you should leave at home or find a place that you can stow. A phone that is not silenced. How disruptive is it when you have a alarm go off right in the middle of the conversation? So making sure you silence your phone as you go in. Items with
Not sure if John might have froze there for a second or not. I think he's back now. I think items with another organization's logo, I think you were at.
Yeah, I think it'd just be a little bit dangerous to wear the competitor's logo when you go up and speak to a company, knowing that you're sporting the logo of their competitor. That's all I have to add about that. So we can move on.
Great. So again, just kind of continuing again, those best practices for the in-person, your arrival and greeting. Obviously, want to be smiling. I know you might be nervous, which leads me to my point. If your favorite employer is there and you're planning on speaking to them, maybe don't start with them. Try to go work the rust off, get some of the nerves out, pick another employer, even somebody you know, like you don't have any interest in. That's okay. Just start the conversation, get some practice, practice your greeting, practice smile, being happy, engaged as much as you can. Shaking hands, right? So some people are open to shaking hands, others are not. Kind of read the room and the body language a little bit to be able to identify that before you would go in for that necessarily. And again, I talked about this earlier, but your 30-second spot. Who are you? Related experience to the role, the position of the company, and be excited. It's okay to be excited. They want enthusiasm. They're standing there all day talking to students. They want somebody to come in and kind of like knock their socks off and be overly excited about their company, positions they have, or the work they do. People love to talk about themselves. So it's really natural that you can ask them some questions about what do they like so much about the company, or what do people say who have worked at the company before? And you want to kind of craft some questions that are authentic in that way. Or hey, I saw on the website that you talk about community service as a really big part of your mission. Can you tell me a little bit about how that mission is lived out in real time? So definitely want to ask those questions and just be excited. And I love the example question here at the bottom of the slide. What are some qualities of previous interns or employees that stand out in your mind? So they get this question a lot. And so the reason I love it is because the answers can be relatively the same for them. So if you can throw a little bit of a twist or something different onto it, I would encourage that. So a question I would like to ask would be, how would a former employee or intern describe their experience at the company, right? So kind of like flipping the question around instead of just, hey, can you describe what a previous intern or employee, like what are some good qualities of those people? Flip it around on them. Make them try to discuss and share with you how they think somebody who used to work for the company would describe them.
Yeah, I love those questions. And there's something I noticed about a lot of those questions, Dustin, is they were often open-ended questions, not that could be answered with a yes or no, but something that allows the recruiter, the representative from the company to expand and talk at length and really get the conversation going. So craft some questions, have them in your back pocket. Best practices for in-person, know how to follow up. That's really important to making most out of your your career fair. You can recap what you've learned, reiterate your interest and intention of taking next steps. You can ask about the best way to stay in contact through the process. And consider when possible sending a brief thank you note expressing gratitude for that recruiter or representative's time. I think this can go a really long way to keeping the conversation going and hopefully leading you to an opportunity to interview.
And then next, we kind of just want to touch again on some specifics to the virtual fair, technical considerations, so things to take note of. Make sure you're joining with preferred browser, which for Handshake would be Chrome or Firefox. Having the link ready for your resume. So again, you might be in that conversation. Your resume might not naturally come up immediately, right? They might be asking a little bit about your experience, but you're not going to join the session. Like, all right, well, here's my resume, and then not speak. You're going to have a conversation first. But as that meeting is coming to a close, as your minutes are dwindling down and the conversation is naturally coming to an end, you want to have a link to that resume ready so that you're able to share it with them and kind of continue that conversation. And I would add on to that, make sure that you do have some contact info like John and I have both talked about so you can follow up appropriately. Be aware of just your sound when you're in like group sessions, especially. This goes in line with being in a quiet professional space. When you're in the group sessions, like I said, you want to make sure that you're muted, kind of practice that what we call Zoom etiquette, and so that you're not having any extra additional sound in that way too. So you're definitely going to want to unmute for the one-on-ones, but kind of mute for the group sessions until there would be maybe an open Q&A in that way too. And if there is open Q&A, just make sure that you're not somebody who is dominating a conversation too. Employers are also going to be looking about how students work in group dynamics. So let's just say you asked a couple of questions. Make sure that you allow space in that group session for somebody else to ask a question too. There's always going to be opportunity later for final questions, or maybe, like I said, to send that message or follow up. So that's just something that you want to consider as well. And then if specific to the virtual fairs again, so if your schedule needs to change, which that totally can happen last minute as well, you just be professional in your communication to be able to send that message out to them to let them know, because if you're able to cancel it, that's hopefully then going to be able to free up a spot for somebody else. So if you're just registering for something to register for it to like have a spot somewhere and you don't plan on using it, make sure that you're able to cancel it so that you can free it up for somebody else to kind of take advantage of the session. So we can see here at the bottom, a message going out to Pete to let them know that they're canceling. And so again, that professional communication will also go a long way, and hopefully you're able to follow up. And you can join the group sessions at any time they're in session. So let's just say a one-on-one of yours like runs over a little bit, or you're running a little bit behind getting to the group session, you can still join later. So that's just something else to consider too. And with that being said, thank you so much. I know we covered a lot of information in that way. So we wanted to make sure we left plenty of time for questions as well. So at this point, I just want to say thank you for joining us. We really appreciate it. And at this point in time, we'll be able to take some questions.